In this presentation, we're going to be looking at analytical research. This is Unit 3 of the Advanced Higher course, and it's about evaluating business information. Analytical research allows organisations to take time to make decisions, to allow them to make sure that their decisions are the best they possibly can be. So decision making is a process that managers have to go through to make sure they're making the best decisions, as I've already said, to achieve the organisation's goals. Some decisions are your normal day-to-day decisions that do not take a lot of thought. They don't have a lot of impact. Okay, we call these operational decisions. We then have decisions that take longer, your tactical and your strategic decisions, and these do require quite a bit of thought. In order to help decision making, a business carries out, or they can carry out, a number of research techniques. Now we're going to look at force field, we're going to look at SWOT analysis, the critical path and the Gantt chart. Now these are all covered in other units. The force field will be covered also in Unit 2 under change. The SWOT analysis similarly, and the critical path and the Gantt chart are covered under time and task management later on, but we do have to know these no matter what. We do have to know these for the exam. So first and foremost, the force field. This goes into the force field in just a little, really just skims the surface of it. When you come to do it in Unit 2, you'll see that we do go into a lot more depth. Now what I will say is a force field analysis is always required in the Advanced Higher exam under the case study part of the course. You will be asked to draw a force field analysis, so it's really important that you're able to do that. As I said, Unit 2 will go into this in more depth. We are just literally introducing it just now. So the force field analysis was introduced by a guy called Kurt Lewin, who was a German-American psychologist, and it does provide a framework for looking at influencing factors that can cause a situation to change. Now the thing about it is, we look at 3 different stages. We look at drivers, we look at resistors, and we look at assets for change. And it's really important that you are able to do this and draw this, as I say, in the exam. This is normally an 8-mark question, and if you know how to do a force field analysis, it's a gift. The force field analysis, really the advantages of it are that you can use lots of evidence to make informed decisions. We have these things called assets for change that I've just mentioned, and they're included as well. Now, an asset for change is something that won't actually drive the change, but their existence will help the change. So, for example, the organisation may have a really highly skilled management team, they may have really great up-to-date technology, they might be a market leader in the product they're already in. So what they're doing is they're setting themselves up to be really successful when the change does come about. So the assets for change do not drive the change, but they actually help the change to take place. The disadvantages, however, is it's static. So when changes are made, you're going to have to redo it because it becomes out of date very quickly. Another thing about it is it's subjective, which means that whoever's actually preparing the force field analysis, it's their thought, it's what they think, it might not necessarily be someone else's. So assets for change I've just explained to you here, and that's really just talking about what kind of things could be assets for change. So they help a decision to be implemented. They don't actually drive it, they just help it. And here are some things here, we've kind of talked about them, but having a good bit of finance to train your staff, have good stakeholders who are going to support your change, having expertise in the area already, having maybe experienced change before in a similar situation, having great technology in place, having a liquid business, i.e. a business that's a going concern and you're not worrying about going into bankruptcy or anything like that. All of these things are what we call assets for change. They exist just now and they're going to help with your change. They're not going to drive it. And as I say, you'll find this in change in Unit 2. The SWOT analysis we looked at Higher Business, and the SWOT analysis is also a decision-making tool. And in this, we look at internal factors and external factors affecting the business. Your internal factors, remember, are strengths and weaknesses, the strengths being the positives, the weaknesses being the negatives, and your external factors being your pest deck. Opportunities are positive external factors, and threats are negative external factors. And as I say, we did this at Higher, so you should be quite aware of this. And these also help the organisation to make your kind of longer term decision, your tactical and your strategic decisions. Once again, like the force field analysis, it's got to be a continuous process because change is taking place inside and outside the business all the time. So a SWOT analysis should be considered from the organisation's own point of view and that of its people they deal with, their stakeholders, and it has to be honest and realistic. There's no point in embellishing some of these opportunities or strengths or whatever, because it's not going to help you to make good quality decisions. So the advantages then of your SWOT analysis are that it allows you to get to understand your business a bit better because you're looking at your strengths and weaknesses in a bit more depth. It allows you to address your weaknesses, deter threats as much as you possibly can, so try and cope with anything outside the business as best you can. Capitalise on opportunities, try to use the opportunities to your advantage. Take advantage of your strengths as well, and develop business goals and strategies for achieving these goals. What are the problems? As I've already mentioned, it's static. It doesn't provide solutions or offer alternative decisions. You've actually got to think of how you would use that to solve your problem, how you would use your strengths and your weaknesses, etc. And it can generate too many ideas and make it quite difficult to decide which one's the best, because it's not going to choose, as I say, the best decision for you. The critical path analysis is another way of planning and monitoring the implementation of a strategy. Now, what this is all about is if you've got a large project, it's about breaking the project up into all the different tasks involved and trying to piece these together so that your job or your project can be completed as quickly and efficiently as you possibly can. So what involves is you identify each of the activities you need to complete a project. So if you think of building a house, there are lots and lots of individual little activities you have to do to get to a fully finished house. Another thing you've got to do is calculate the time that will be taken by each activity, working out if two activities can maybe be done at the same time. So for example, if you're replumbing and rewiring, you could maybe do these both at the same time, and identify which activities can't start until others have been completed. Now what I'm saying by that is, you can't actually, until your house is watertight, you can't start rewiring, because you have to make sure the house is watertight. So getting a roof and everything on it's more important, and then you're putting your activities into an order. What it does do is it helps keep a project to time. It allows all members of the team to participate in the planning of the project and help identifying where you can maybe meet time and cost savings where you possibly can by doing things together, by doing things quicker. The critical path is a sequence of activities which, when added together, give the total length the project is expected to take. So what it also does is it allows you to give an idea of how long it's going to take for the project to carry out, because if you do the critical path, just add together all the times and you'll be able to come up with the estimated total time that the task or the project is going to take. If there's any delay in the critical path, we call this slippage. The whole project will be delayed, so it's important to stay as close to your times as you possibly can. Businesses who plan will avoid unnecessary delays. For example, completing work simultaneously will shorten the overall length of the project. So I gave you the example of rewiring and replumbing a house at the same time. It may be possible, however, to delay activities not on the critical path without delaying the final completion of the project. Okay, so it might be there are things there that are maybe not necessarily critical to the finishing of the project, and they might not be necessary to finish the project. So it might be things that are maybe, you're talking maybe about snagging or stuff like that. The critical path is shown in diagrammatic form, and it looks like that down there. So you can see to do task A, they reckon it'll take 4 weeks, to do task B 2 weeks, and then it looks to me as though they can do C and D at the same time, C taking longer than D, okay, but they'll then do E and F at the same time, and then obviously G will take 2 weeks. So it gives them an idea of what projects they can do together and which projects, what time they're going to take. So the critical path analysis then, what are the advantages and disadvantages of it? Well, the advantages of critical path are it helps to reduce risk and the cost of complex projects. So you're maybe going to try and keep your costs down, and you're going to reduce risk because you're going to make sure that you've got it all planned out so that mistakes won't happen. It encourages careful assessment of the requirements of each activity. So it allows you to take, well, it's going to take me 3 weeks to do this because I've got to do that and that and that, and I'm going to need this and that. So it does help you to carefully assess the requirements. It also helps spot activities which have some slack. Now that was when I showed you there might be, like, you've got 2 weeks to do one thing, but you only need a week and a half to do another one. So what it means is you could maybe look at that and try to allocate resources a little bit differently. So when those people are finished their week and a half project, before they move on, is there anything they could be doing to help the project along? It also provides managers with a useful overview of a complex project. What are the problems? The reliability of critical path is based on accurate estimates and assumptions. So if they are not right, then your critical path won't be right, and it doesn't guarantee success. It still has to be managed properly. So for you to say a job's going to take 3 weeks, you have to make sure that your staff are being managed properly to make sure that that job takes 3 weeks. So it still has to be managed. Finally, we're going to look at Gantt charts, and Gantt charts were invented by a guy called Henry Gantt, and a writer in the Classic School of Management. We'll talk about that later on. These are still widely used to schedule projects in modern businesses. They're basically bar charts displaying different activities involved in a project along with how long they will take. So something kind of similar to your critical path. The bars are coloured so that in each activity you can see which ones have been completed, so that the progress can be checked. They tend to use these, for example, in things like building sites where houses are maybe being done or completed at different stages, and by looking at the Gantt chart they can see what stage each of the houses are at by the different coloured blocks. So what are the steps then to create a Gantt chart? Identify each different activity that needs to be done to implement the strategy. So if we use the house building thing again, you'll need to look at all the different activities involved in it. Decide how much time each activity will take. You can see the kind of similarity here with critical path. Decide the order in which the activities will be done. Then you want to create some kind of table or spreadsheet, perhaps nowadays with ICT. Before they would have done it by hand, but now they can do it on a table or a spreadsheet. Key in the days, weeks and months as appropriate across the top. So it could be, for example, you're saying, well, a house takes 2 months to build. So you might want to break that down into weeks or whatever, so that you can actually do the different tasks individually. Write each activity that will need to be done down the left-hand side. And for each activity, draw a box from the start time to the end time. And what you're doing there is making sure that every single activity is on the chart. Okay, so something kind of similar to this one in the picture here. They're similar to critical path in that both techniques chart the progress of a project over a period of time. Gantt charts are updated as the project develops, which makes them more helpful. So here's the same project that you had seen before and shown as a Gantt chart. Some Gantt charts have an actual row below each projected row to record real progress. So you can see here that they reckon it's going to take them like 8 weeks to find new suppliers, outlets 4 weeks, then on week 5 you'll decide on the price, and so on. And that's how it actually works until you actually reach the end of your